Welcome back to the channel, everybody. And today's episode is actually going to be talking about Dead by Daylight Survivor perks, the base perks, which means similar to what we did with the killers, and how we rank them from best to worst or worst to best from tier D through A, and we gave them an A plus, C plus, and B plus. We're going to be doing the same exact thing with the survivors, but instead of it being 3 episodes, it's just going to be 1 because the survivors are a lot more simplistic, I'm going to say, because all they have is their perks that go with them. And once we finish this, I'm actually going to start doing 3 episodes a week. One will be a live stream of Dead by Daylight. I know the second episode will be kind of like the backstory of a survivor killer. And the third part, I have no idea yet, but I just want to give you guys that heads up. But going back to the video and this topic, let's kick things off here in Tier D, as it's going to be Ace Visconti. And his first perk we're going to be talking about is open-handed, which means basically his team's aura reading range is increased by 4 meters. This perk right here isn't too bad. It's not great either. I can't say it's average. I mean, 4 meters isn't really much when you honestly think about it. That's like 4 inches right in front of you, and I don't really think that it's a very helpful perk. I mean, it's great that your whole team can do that within 4 meters, but it doesn't really do enough for me to even be like, woohoo, this is a cool perk. Next up, we have Upped the Ante, which means for each other survivor still alive, you are granted a 1% bonus of luck to all remaining survivors. And this is a snipe, so it could be up to 3%. Yeah, I mean, Upped the Ante is, what is 1% at the end of time? 3% of luck really going to do? It doesn't really, I mean, it doesn't. You guys can kind of get where I'm going come out this one. It's not very efficient. It's kind of pointless. Then his last perk is Ace in the Hole, which means when retrieving an item from a chest, there's a 100% chance that a very rare or lower add-on will be attached to it. A 10% chance of finding an add-on of uncommon rarity or lower. When escaping, you keep any add-ons your item has. So this perk right here is only his really redeemable perk, and it is average at best. That's cool. It has an add-on. It may last a little bit longer, or, but still at the same time, if you get a toolbox, they don't even last that long anymore. So it's kind of like, okay, whatever. I mean, you got to hope it says a flashlight and stuff like that, but I'm not really here to talk about add-on perks because it's too complicated and there's too many of them. So for that reason, sorry, Ace, but you're the first survivor that gets put into Tier D. Sorry, bud. So next up, we have Quentin Smith, and his first perk is called Wake Up, which basically means once all gens are powered, the exit gates are revealed to you within a 128-meter range. While opening the exit gates, it reveals your aura to other survivors up to 120 meters as well. While Wake Up is active, you open exit gates 5% faster. Now, this perk right here isn't too bad. I just feel that it's not necessarily needed. Considering the fact the game literally gives you about that 5-second window to see where the exit gates are in terms of where to actually open them, it's kind of whatever. And the fact I think what's cool is that other survivors can see you for those 128 meters, and the exit gates open up 5% faster. But overall, it's kind of one of those perks that I don't think I ever really needed, but I guess it's kind of glad it's there. I don't know. It's not very nifty for me at least. Next up, we have Pharmacy, which means it searches when you're searching through chest. It is 40% faster, and the noises they cause, along with their hearing distances, are reduced by 8 meters. Pharmacy guarantees an emergency medkit on your first completed search. To be honest, I never really thought I needed Pharmacy. It just kind of, I feel like I'm crapping on David King, but honestly, the first 2 perks are just whatever to me. It's cool that they're there, but I don't really need them. They're not essential. I mean, especially if you have a Claudette with you, but we'll get in that in a little bit. Yes, and then his third perk is called Vigil. You and your allies within an 8-meter range recover from the exhausted, hemorrhage, mangled, hindered, blindness effects for 10% faster once out of range. The effect persists for 15 seconds. It's not too bad. I wish it would just take it away completely. I feel like that would be more useful if they're around you for 15 seconds, but honestly, Quentin Smith, I'm sorry, but to me, you're kind of pointless, so you're getting put into Tier D. Sorry, bud. So next up here, we have got Yui Kamara, and her first perk we're going to be talking about is Lucky Break. Approach, this activates anytime you're injured, and when you're injured, with this perk, you won't leave blood trails for a total of 120 seconds, which basically is 2 minutes. But once those 120 seconds are over, this perk is completely deactivated. That means you cannot use it for the rest of the trial. So even though this is a very nifty perk, it feels a little bit like they could do a lot more with this. I mean, if you were able to hide the scratch marks maybe for 120 seconds until you're healed, I feel like that would have been more useful. I mean, look, dropping blood is not that crazy. I mean, sometimes killers don't even really see it because they're not really focused on it. They're focused on watching the scratch marks. So this perk, I feel like if it could be touched upon a little bit, I probably would have put Yui Kimura in a higher rating, but this is kind of one of the reasons why she fell into tier D. Her next perk is any means not necessary. Pretty much what this is you pretty much set a pallet. If it's already been down, you put it right back to its upright position to be down again if you ever need it to. It does take 4 seconds, might I add, and it has a cooldown of 140 seconds. So to me, honestly, you don't get enough bang as you guys are given for your buck. And again, another perk that I feel that should be touched upon and reworked because the idea on paper sounds good, but at the same time, what if 140 seconds for a 4-second pallet resetting? It doesn't seem fair, and it doesn't make much sense to even use when you really think about it, because it's kind of pointless if you're going to have a 140-second delay to use it again. And her last perk is Breakout. Pretty much when within 6 meters of a carried survivor, you gain the haste effect, moving at a 5% increased speed. The carried survivor's wiggle speed is increased by 20%. This one is our only decently useful perk, and it still isn't even an average perk to even call it that. So like I said, Yui Kimura as a whole seems like a one big retouch perk makeover would be great for her, and then she would have really been on a higher tier for me. But for those reasons, like I mentioned, for these 3 perks, she is in tier. So next up, we have Laurie Strode, and her first perk we're going to be talking about is called Soul Survivor, which basically means your aura cannot be read by the killer within a max range of 20 meters. For each killed or sacrificed survivor, it increases your chances of being the killer's obsession. Killer can only be obsessed with one survivor at a time. So I know that kind of may have been a little bit confusing. What that means is Laurie Strode's perks, if you've ever seen any of the Michael Myers movies, you know that she's kind of like the massively big one to be obsessed with. So all of her perks are going to get you into a lot of trouble and constantly be the obsession and be toyed with for quite a long time. I just want to get a big disclaimer there for you guys. And with Soul Survivor, it's basically meant to be that you're the last person alive. That's kind of what they try to really make that out to be. So that way you're going to be chased at the end, like kind of like the traditional final girl thing, and like or the final person in like every horror movie kind of type of thing, or every slasher movie at least. That's what they try to make that out to be, and hopefully that made it a little bit easier for you guys to understand. The second perk that she has, and one of my most hated perks, is Object of Obsession. If you are looking in the killer's direction, your link will reveal your auras to each other. This effect applies only if you are outside the killer's terror radius. As the killer's obsession, this effect applies to a max range of 56 meters. If not the obsession, it applies to a max of 44 meters. It increases chances of being the killer's obsession. The killer can only be obsessed with one survivor at a time. Let me just pretty much put this into layman terms. This perk is meant for you to be the obsession. It says it increases your chances. I've used this perk countless of times, and I've always been the obsession. There's only been one time where I wasn't the obsession because another survivor was actually using Laurie Strode, and it actually had object of obsession. So yeah, that's the reason why I wasn't that one time. So both people, unless you have 2 people who have that perk, um, it's a very difficult perk to use. Probably the most complicated. I do apologize about the dog you're about hearing downstairs, but it is one of the most difficult perks that there are by far. And the reason why I say this is because you have to be very skilled and know when to use that. You can actually save a lot of other survivors if you do it right. By like in the middle of a chase, they could see you and probably try to get to you, and then you can turn around and try to run. Or like when someone's getting them off the hook, you can kind of bait the killer to come in your direction. Things like that. This is a very nifty perk, but it's such a backfiring perk, and it's more of a hindrance than a helpful one. So that's just how I feel about Object of Obsession. And last but not least, probably her only real redeemable perk. I feel like I said the same thing for Ace Visconti, but it's actually Decisive Strike. You stab at your aggressor in an ultimate attempt to escape. After being unhooked or unhooking yourself, Decisive Strike will become active and usable for 40 seconds. While Decisive Strike is active, when grabbed by the killer, succeed a skill check to automatically escape the killer's grasp and stun the killer for 5 seconds. Succeeding or failing the Decisive Strike skill check will disable Decisive Strike for the rest of the trial. Successfully stunning the killer will result in you becoming the obsession and increases your chances of becoming the obsession, and the killer can only be obsessed with one survivor at a time. Like I said, this is the only real redeemable perk that Laurie Strode has. And though this is, don't get me wrong, this Decisive Strike thing comes at literally the worst times. So be very, very careful if you want to use this perk. As soon as you unhook somebody or unhook yourself, just be ready for it to pop up at a random moment. If you're trying to be a troll and get down, then try to strike them and run again. It is a very difficult and hard skill check to hit. The meter for it is extremely small. I wasn't able to capture footage on it with Laurie Strode on this one. I was really hoping I could have, but yeah, it's one of those, like I said, Laurie Strode, because of her perks are so meant for her to die, or meant for her to be tormented or stalked for most of the game, or attacked for most of the game. For those reasons, Laurie Strode, you're getting put into tier D. Sorry, bud. So next up, we have David King. And David King's first perk is We're Gonna Live Together, which means each time you perform a safe hook rescue or take a hit to protect the survivor, you gain a 25% stackable bonus to all blood points. This gains up to a max of 50%. And bonus blood points are only awarded post trial, which means pretty much you won't see them throughout like the game, or like as you normally would for being like for like doing a generator or repairs or safe hook things that you'll see it afterward, and then the post trial when they're giving you all the extra blood points and stuff. If you have any like 25% this, and you guys get what I'm talking about. Next up, we have Dead Hard, which means you can take a beating when injured. Tap into your adrenaline bank and dash forward quickly to avoid damage. Press the pretty much you'd be pressing, I believe it's X if I'm not mistaken. And when you do that, depending on what system you're on, or if you're on PC, I know it's a different button. But when you do that, while running to dash forward, during the dash you avoid taking damage. So pretty much you can literally get whacked and it won't register. I actually didn't know that until I was using David King, because I was always wondering, hey, how are some of these like survivors, specifically David King's, always taking these hits? It didn't make any sense to me, and I was like, oh, that's why they have Dead Hard. But during the stash, once you do it, you get the exhausted status effect for 60 seconds, and you don't recover from the exhausted effect, as you guys know, while you're running. And last but not least, he's got the perk No Mither. No Mither means you are affected by the broken status effect for the whole trial. You cannot heal yourself. Big thing. You cannot heal yourself if you actually use No Mither. You are stuck in the injured status effect for the entire game. I just want to point that out there. You don't leave pools of blood, though, and grunts caused by the injuries are reduced by 0% at any time. Grants the ability to fully recover from the dying state. Now, this one, I actually haven't really been able to like fiddle with it, because it didn't seem like it was only once, like how Unbreakable is. In one game, actually did it twice. I don't know if that was like a mistake or what, but yeah. So it's a pretty decent perk. It is honestly one of my most hated. The fact that you're pretty much a one tap is not fun. There are times where if you're getting chased by the killer, once the killer knows you have no Mither, you're pretty much going to be screwed, because at that point they're like, oh great, so that means I can't leave him on the ground. You're going to get hooked, and immediately it's kind of like you become the killer's chew toy, if that makes sense. So for those reasons, sorry David King, but you're also in the D tier. To recap, tier D, it is Ace Visconti, Laurie Strode, David King, Quentin Smith, and Yui Kamar. To kick things off here in Tier C, it is going to be none other than Dwight Fairfield. And basically, his first perk is called Bond. And what that means is allies' auras are revealed to you when they are within a 20-meter range. This can be somewhat useful, and as it realized on a couple of maps, it's pretty much like, I would say, if you're in a parking garage, if you go to 3 rows over to your right or left, that's how you're basically going to see them. That's the best way to kind of describe that for you. It is it's an average perk. To be honest, I feel like all of the White's perks are like average, like his whole backstory is too. But his second perk is Prove Thyself, which what that means is for every other survivor working on a generator within a 4-meter range, gain 10% repair bonus speeds applied to other survivors within range, and pretty much you get actually 50% more blood points for cooperative actions. While this happens, the survivors can only be affected by one proof itself at a time. So, by the way, for you Dwight mains who also like to, at the same time use 2 different Dwight, and want to use Prove Thyself, you'd probably one of you should use Prove Thyself, while the other one uses his third perk, which we'll get to that in a quick second, Leader. But getting to Leader, that perk is pretty much what that means is increases other survivors' healing, sabotage, unhooking, and cleansing open gates, chest searches speeds by 15% when they're within an 8-meter range from you. Survivors can be affected by only one leader effect at a time. The effect persists on other survivors for 15 seconds after leaving the perk range. As I said, average at best is the way to describe Dwight Fairfield. With Leader, I my biggest gripe with this perk is the fact that it's only 8 meters. I felt 12 to 16 would have been a little bit more doable. I wouldn't say appreciative, but doable, I feel like is a better word. Because 8 meters again is about, like, you, if you're in your own house, or you in this game, if you're going there and you go past 3 different trees that are right next to it, that's pretty much 8 meters from the generator, and then the next thing could be right next to it. So yeah, 8 meters is kind of a little bit of an unfair, um, as an unfair, unrealistic meter range for me. And for those reasons, Dwight, you're in tier C. Alrighty, so the next killer we have in tier C is kind of a very interesting one, because I really didn't know where to put him, because this one depends on playstyles, in my opinion, and just overall, how if you're more of a savior type of playstyle, or you're more of a gen based playstyle. It's really weird. So he could have gone anywhere from tier B to tier D. So he has that similar Michael Myers controversy about him. And this killer is none other than Ashley J. Williams. His first perk is Flip Flop, which basically means while in the dying state, 50% of your recovery progression is converted into wiggle progression. When you are picked up by the killer, up to a max of 40% of total wiggle progression. So let's say if you're at like 90% for your wiggle, your recovery progression, that'll be 40% already added to your wiggle. This is actually a really useful perk, and only one of its kind. It's a very odd, but could be life-saving. So I do like this perk. Next up, it is Buckle Up, which basically means the recovery progress of dying survivors can be determined by the intensity of their auras. At a distance of up to 48 meters, when you heal a survivor from their dying state to the injured, both you and the healed survivors see the killer's aura for 4 seconds. This is another very useful one, but another survivor has this perk. Not necessarily has that same exact thing, but in a different way in terms of like unhooking. It's very odd. I do like Buckle Up, but I'm not sure how much I like Buckle Up. Next up, it is Medal of Man. After you earn 3 protection hit scoring events, this perk activates. Once activated, the next occasion that would put you into the dying state from the injured state is ignored. Next time you heal back to full health, your aura will be shown to the killer when you are further than 12 meters from the killer. Medal of Man will deactivate the next time you are put into the dying state. Increases the chances to be the killer's obsession. The killer can only be obsessed with one survivor at a time. Medal of Man is the one perk I really, really don't like. And that's what I said, where he could be either this perk could really derail his ranking, or even put him at a higher ranking for you. This is what stopped him from me being a B. Is even though Flip Flop and Buckle Up are pretty good, this perk right here, I am not a fan of the fact you have to earn 3 protection hit scoring events. What is that? That honestly could put you into the dying state twice almost. I'm not a big fan of this perk, because it leaves you very vulnerable to yourself. I mean, I get always trying to help somebody else. I mean, that's perfect, but at the same time, this perk is meant for you to take a beating, and I'm not really okay with it. So, like I said, this one right there really depends on your playstyle, but for me, it's what put him at a C tier. So, for those reasons, Ashley J. Williams, you are in tier C. So next up in tier C, it is Zarina Kassir, and her first perk is Off the Record. Once you are unhooked or escape from the hook, Off the Record activates for 60 seconds. While Off the Record is active, your aura will not be shown to the killer, and grunts of the pain caused by the injuries will be reduced by 100%. So for 60 seconds, this is actually a very, very useful perk. I really, really like this perk a lot. And one of those I recommend that if you don't have her and you don't want to buy her, get it in the Shrine of Secrets whenever it becomes available. Remember, it's 2 survivor perks every week, and then 2 killer perks that go with it also every week. So, yes, a big plus there. Next up, we have Red Herring, which is after repairing a gen for at least 3 seconds, it will be highlighted to you with a yellow aura. The gen stays highlighted until it is fully repaired, or you repair a new generator or enter a locker. Entering any locker will trigger a loud noise indicator for the killer at the highlighted gen's location. To look at, again, Red Herring can only be triggered once every 60 seconds. Pretty much, this is actually really useful. I do like this perk as well. With it, the fact that you can go into locker and it'll trigger like this noise indicator for the killer to like hear and try to probably go to that specific one can be very useful, especially if the killer loses you and you hide in a locker and then click, he hears that, he's probably going to leave you alone, or they will probably leave you alone and go to that gen. It's actually been proven to work time and time again. So I do like this perk. Next up, it is For the People. This is where I don't like the perk. For the People is only active when at full health. When healing another survivor without a medkit to instantly heal them from the dying to injured, or injured to healthy, you become injured and receive the broken effect for 110 seconds. You become the obsession. Equipping this perk decreases your chances to be the killer's obsession at the start of the trial. Here's my thing. I do like this perk, but the fact that if you don't have a medkit, it's like you're being all of a sudden Houdini. I'm going to take your pain, add it to me, and you can take my perfectly good healthy status. I don't like that. This could be useful at the end of the game if the killer actually downs somebody, that you're going to quickly go, ha, take this, now I'm hurt, and then you run, and I'm going to try to like run with you, and hopefully we don't get down together. That's the only time this perk could be very useful. I just don't like the fact the fact you have to hurt yourself to help somebody else, like, or heal somebody else. I'm not a big fan of that, because at the same time, what if you've been hooked twice? There's so many factors I could take into it with that perk. It's kind of what actually put Zarina at a C, is just the overall fact of how wishy-washy that perk can be and how much of a hindrance more than it being helpful. It can be helpful for other people, but not necessarily for yourself. So for those reasons, Zarina, you're a C. So next up, it is none other than Meg Thomas. And Meg Thomas's first perk is Quick and Quiet, which means when quickly vaulting over obstacles or hiding in lockers, the noise detection and audio range is reduced by 100%. This can be triggered once every 30 seconds. This is one of her more useful perks, and one of the few that I was like, oh, this is a pretty dope perk, and it can be useful, especially when you're in the chase about to lose a killer and you want to make sure that that way they don't see you, quickly vault over something. It's an easy escape. This perk is very above average to me. And then her next perk is Sprint Burst. Basically means when starting to run, a break into a sprint of 150% of your normal running speed for a max 3 seconds causes the exhausted effect for 60 seconds. Sprint Burst can't be used while exhausted already, and you can't recover from the exhaust effect while running. Here's my thing. I accidentally activated this perk when I was trying to quickly just run to the nearest generator. I don't like the fact that it doesn't really have a thing where you can say, like, at least a button that you can press, be like, no, I'm just going to run normally. If you try to run with this perk on, this perk will immediately activate for those 3 seconds, and it can really kind of bite you in the rear end, considering the fact it has a way too long cooldown for me of a minute, and that's if you stop running, because after those 3 seconds, you have to kind of walk for the next 60 seconds to kind of recuperate and use it again. It's funny because it doesn't do, it's that one perk that really kind of almost had to go for me into tier D because of just how this perk is. I don't like this perk at all. I feel like it's kind of a very big pain in the rear end to have. It's more of a hindrance to it than a helpful one. But with that being said, let's go into our third perk here, which is Adrenaline. It will instantly heal 1 health state and sprint at 150% of your normal running speed for 5 seconds when the exit gates are opened. Adrenaline is on hold if you are disabled at movement, which basically means if you're in the killer's grasp, it'll wait, or if you're hooked or in the killer's grasp and they're trying to bring you to a hook, it'll actually wait until you get off the hook or fight or wiggle your way out of the killer's grasp. So this could be a very useful perk. Basically, once you're actually free to move again, Adrenaline will wake you up if you are asleep, which basically means that kind of counteracts Freddy Krueger when this perk triggers. Adrenaline will ignore the exhausted effect. This is one of the only perks in this game, I think the only perk that will actually ignore the exhausted effect. But it does also cause the exhausted effect for 6 seconds after the perk is over, And remember, you get that 150% speed boost for 5 seconds. Then once it's over, you're exhausted for a whole minute. You can still run, but it won't be as fast, and you can't recover from the exhausted effect while running. This is a pretty good perk. I said sprint burst honestly hurt her stock here. I'm gonna say it's just one of those perks that don't do enough for me, and is more, like I said, more of a hindrance. And I almost put it into tier D. Adrenaline and quick and quiet is an average perk in my opinion, but adrenaline saved her from being put into tier D. So, congrats, Meg Thomas. You're in tier C. So next up, folks, it is Steve Harrington, and his first perk is called Babysitter. When you unhook a survivor, the unhooked survivor leaves no scratch marks or blood trails for the next 4 seconds. You see the killer's aura, and the killer sees your specific aura for the next 4. This is actually a very unique and very interesting perk. I do like this perk all the way up to the part where the killer sees your aura, and you can see theirs for 4 seconds. I'd rather not see their aura, and they don't see mine for the next 4, because this is a perk that can be very detrimental to you, and at the same time as it helps the injured survivor escape, as it hurts you. And at the same time as we're helping other people, a good portion of the game is being individual. So in terms of your individualistic self, this is a big no-no. You definitely don't want the killer chasing you just because you help somebody else. And at the same time, it's kind of like, Steve Harry. It does say babysitter. It's kind of like a cliche actually on the perk. But yeah, I think that one is pretty much up to the playstyle of that said person who's playing Steve Harrington. Next up, it is camaraderie. Camaraderie. Yeah, I think I said that right. If not, spell check everybody. Comment it down below. While on the hook, in the struggle phase, this perk activates. If another survivor is within 60 meters while the perk is active, the hook timer is paused for 26 seconds. This is very, very useful. Can you imagine not dying for an extra 26 seconds? Not only will that piss the killer off, it saves your life possibly, and it could possibly stop you from being put into the instant struggle phase of the, well, at that point you actually already be at the struggle phase, so correction. But still, it stops you from being, impaled to death for 26 seconds, and gives the survivors enough time to hopefully hook you within that 26-second amount of time. So, yeah, I do like camaraderie a lot more than I like babysitter. The third perk is called Second Wind. When you have healed other survivors for the equivalent of 1 health state, Second Wind activates. If affected by the broken effect, Second Wind won't activate, though. While Second Wind is activated the next time you are unhooked, or you unhook yourself, you are affected by the broken effect. After a total duration of 34 seconds, Second Wind will automatically heal you from injured to healthy. Second Wind deactivates once you become healthy or put into the dying state. Pretty much if Second Wind successfully does not trigger, if it doesn't trigger successfully, you will lose the broken effects, and that perk will be kind of gone until you can use it again. I'm not the biggest fan of Second Wind. It is a perk that, if you could reduce the duration, 34 seconds is a long time. Within 34 seconds, that killer can easily catch up to you and bop you, and then you're put back into the dying stage. So for me, this perk alone kind of stopped him from being a B. As Babysitter, I felt was one of those C plus perks where like, it could be good, it could be useful, really depending on your play style. But overall, Steve Harrington, you are getting put into tier C. So getting the C plus in this tier, it is going to be Jake Park. Jake Park's first perk is Iron Will, which pretty much grunts of pain caused by injuries are reduced by 50%. As a base perk, this is pretty freaking awesome. I do like this perk. I do wish there was a little bit more, but beggars can't be choosers. And for 50%, that's very generous considering the fact of how, some perks are like Ace of Guns with 1% luck per survivor that's alive. What a useful perk. But next up, we have Calm Spirit, which means reduces chances of alerting woodland creatures by 80%. To be honest, if you have the killer perk Spies from Above, this really negates that by 80%, because those crows are really a pain in the rear end and literally can screech about everything. Even if you're doing a generator not moving, it'll still screech for some random reason and alert the killer to where you are. So this perk is very, very useful, and it also allows you to overcome the urge to scream. His third perk, though, is Saboteur. You pretty much see hook auras in a 56-meter radius from the pickup spot. If a survivor is being carried, the sabotaging a hook without a toolbox takes 2.5 seconds. They didn't specify. I've been trying to look this one up and try to get as much information as I can on it. It really does feel. I even timed it. It is 2.5 seconds without a toolbox. Although I feel like with the toolbox it's like 2 seconds. So I guess you add 0.5. It doesn't really make much sense to me, and can be a little bit confusing. This also has a 90-second cooldown, so you can use every minute and 30 seconds. It's not too bad, honestly. The only reason why I didn't put him at a B is because of Saboteur, but that's why he's a C plus. I feel like this perk um, could use a little bit of more understanding, just at the fact of the toolbox thing. It doesn't feel like it's 2.5 seconds longer. It doesn't feel like it's 2.5 at timing. It's close to 2.5 seconds. This perk can kind of be a big question mark. It's not the most consistently well explained one, and I don't want to leave it up to interpretation. So for that reason, Saboteur, it is useful, especially when you can see the survivor's pickup spot, and try to quickly head over there and break a hook. That way, it gives them a little bit extra time to escape the killer's grasp. But again, Saboteur is like one of those really big mystery perks. So with that being said, Jake Park, you are a C plus. So to recap Tier C, it is Dwight Fairfield, Meg Thomas, Jake Park, Ashley J. Williams, Steve Harrington, and Zarina Kassir. So to kick things off here in Tier B, it is Nea Carlson, and her first perk is called Balanced Landing. Pretty much what that means is after falling from a height, your staggered duration from falling is reduced by 75%, and the volume of grunts from falling is reduced by 100%. You start sprinting at 150% of your normal running speed for a max of 3 seconds, and it does cause the exhaust effect for 60 seconds. Balanced landing can't be used while exhausted already, and you do not recover from the exhausted status effect while running. This is honestly a really, really good perk. It actually saved me in the video that you guys are watching now. It saved me from dying from the nurse. I think I was either the nurse or the doctor. I can't remember. I have to go look back at that video. But overall, a pretty awesome perk it is. It really can save, especially when you're trying to jump off a big building because you've been chased, trying to dart to the exit gate. It can really save your life. I do like balance landing quite a lot. Next, we have urban evasion, and basically what that means is your movement speed while crouching is increased by 90%. A pretty good perk. I really don't know how to feel about this one, if I'm being honest. It's one of those perks to where it's like, okay, cool, but I don't think I ever really needed that type of perk. Then her third perk is called Streetwise. Pretty much it reduces the consumption rate of an item charge by 15% for you and allies within an 8-meter range. Once out of range, this effect persists for 15 seconds. This isn't too bad. Again, it is an add-on perk, so it's kind of hard to really judge that. But when it comes to using it for your team, if they're near you, again, 8 meters, I feel like this perk could have been a little bit more useful as maybe 12 meters, 16 meters. But going back to urban evasion, I feel this perk is pretty good. I mean, 90% again is very, very generous. So yeah, I mean, I like it, and overall, I give her a B. She's actually a really useful survivor. So Nea Carlson, you're in the B tier. Next up in Tier B, it is Detective Tapp, and his first perk is called Tenacity. It allows you to crawl at 30% faster and recover at the same time. This perk is actually a pretty decent perk. I do like this perk at the fact it does allow you to, recuperate at the same time, 30% faster, and crawl too simultaneously. Really, really useful. I do like it. His next perk is called Detective's Hunch, which what that means is when a generator is completed, the auras of Jen's chest totems within 32 meters range are revealed to you for 10 seconds. If you are actually holding a map, by the way, that can track any of these, it will use Detective's Hunch and add them to the map. Basically, what that means, if you're using a common and it's only to show you like a generator, it'll show you everything. So it's a very useful perk. Not only does it help for your add-ons in terms of maps, it also is a good perk in general when gens are complete. You can see the whole playing field, basically. So a very, very nifty perk. I do like it a lot. His third perk is called Stakeout, which basically what that means is for each 15 seconds you are standing within the killer's terror radius and not in a chase, you gain a token up to a maximum of 2 tokens. One Stakeout has at least 1 token. Good skill checks are considered great skill checks and consume 1 token. This is a perk that I never really ever wanted and still don't want. I don't really care much for this perk. I mean, it's great that it'll help the gen boost because great skill checks boost up a little bit more, but it doesn't it's not appealing to me. It almost put him down to a C. But tenacity and specifically Detective's Hunch is really what kind of shot him up to a B. So congrats on the Detective Tapp for being in Tier B. In Tier B, it is Kate Denson. Her first perk is Dance With Me. When performing a fast vault or leaving a locker in a sprint, you leave no scratch marks for 3 seconds. Dance With Me has a 60-second cooldown. Now, I actually don't mind this perk. It's not too bad. The fact that you don't leave scratch marks for 3 seconds, and I was talking about that earlier in this video about how certain perks should have that. It's a pretty okay perk. I feel like the duration of no scratch marks for 3 seconds is a little bit unfair when you have to wait to use again in 60 seconds. I feel maybe if it was like 5 to 7 seconds, that'd be more useful. But as for the cooldown, I'm not too cool with that, but it is a good perk nonetheless. Her next perk is Windows of Opportunity. It unlocks potential in one's aura reading ability. Auras of pallets, breakable walls, vault locations are revealed to you when within a 20-meter range. Windows of Opportunity has a cooldown of 30 seconds when vaulting or dropping a pallet during a chase. This is actually a really good perk for everything you're getting. 20 meters is actually a very good range for this. And the fact it's only a 30-second cooldown is very useful. Why can't the other perks be like that? So yeah, one of my favorite perks that she has is the Windows of Opportunity. I do like it a lot. Next up, it is Boil Over. When in the killer's grasp, your struggling effects on the killer are increased by 25%, and you obscure the killer's ability to see the hook auras within a 10-meter range. This should be a very problematic thing for the killer and very lucky for you. The fact that you can actually obscure his vision for those 10 meters means he may have a hard time actually negotiating, especially if you're starting to move and wiggle at that 25% rate faster. That's another very good perk. I said, if Dance With Me, if the seconds were a little bit higher and the cooldown was a little bit lower or stay like that with higher seconds, she actually would have been either a B plus or an A. But for all these reasons, Kate Denson, everybody, she is in Tier B. Next up is Fang Min, and Fang Min's first perk is called Technician. Basically what that means is noises caused by your repairs and their hearing distances are reduced by 8 meters. On a failed repair skill check, there's a 30% chance the generated explosion will be prevented. This can be very, very useful, and you better hope that 30% comes in handy. Honestly, I've actually, once I've had this perk, I actually started messing up on a lot of gens, and it feels like it's more than 30%, but they say 30%, so I'm gonna go with it anyway. But yeah, I do like Sprite. There's not much I can complain about Technician. Her next perk is called Life. After performing a rushed vault you actually break into a sprint at 150% of your normal running speed for a max 3 seconds. This causes the exhausted effect for 60 seconds. Life cannot be used while exhausted already, and you can't recover from the exhausted effect while running. I don't mind Life. This feels like this should have been a Meg Thomas perk in my opinion. I really can't get behind this perk for multiple reasons. It kind of really stops you from performing a rushed vault and could actually get you hit because at the same time you necessarily don't want to be running and break to sprint for only 3 seconds and then be exhausted for the rest of it, as what you heard was a bunch of flying papers fly everywhere. That's always wonderful. And yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Lithe. It just doesn't feel very helpful for me. So we're going to go on to Fei Ming's third perk, which is Alert. Pretty much what that means is when the killer performs a break action, the killer is revealed to you for 3 seconds. I actually like Alert because, there's killers who constantly break pallets and such. And if someone's getting chased, you kind of get the feel for where they're constantly going with the killer constantly, stomping down all these pallets that they're throwing down or, such and such. So a very good perk. I feel like it could be a little bit useful for like 2 more seconds. They would have made it 5 seconds. This probably would have put her at a B plus or an A. But like I said, for all those reasons, folks, Feng Ming is a B. Next up here in Tier B, it is going to be Jane Romero. Her first perk is Solidarity. While injured, healing a survivor without using a med kit also heals you at a 40% conversion rate. This can actually be very useful. Just the fact that you're injured and they're injured and you guys are like healing the whole way and you're already 40% healed and the killer may be coming, especially if they have nurses calling, that perk, and then they can quickly heal you and hopefully you guys are both at a healed state and you guys can go dip. Very, very useful perk. I do like this perk a lot. Next up, it is Poised, which is after a gen is completed, you leave no scratch marks for 6 seconds. Another good perk. That's really like it's really set plain in stone. Another very useful perk. Next up, is head on. While standing in a locker for 3 seconds, head on activates. While head on is activated, perform a rush action to leave a locker to use head on. If the killer is standing within the head on effective range, the killer is stunned for a matter of 3 seconds. It causes the exhausted effect for 60 seconds though, and head on cannot be used while already exhausted. You do not recover from the exhausted effect while running. Head on cannot be used when you have idle crows. And by the way, folks, I do apologize about the cameo going on down there. We have our initial cameo of the dog downstairs. It likes to make its appearance every now and again in this video, and it's the only video I'm leaving bloopers in because I thought it'd be kind of funny. So, with all that being said, Jane Romero, by the way, and you guys are wondering, well, if you like all these perks, why isn't she an A? Because I feel that all these perks are very above average. They're not like game changing. They're not going to really be like a 5-tool perk. They're very more individualistic for herself. And except for Solidarity, that's a good one. I do like that one. Poise, you leave no scratch marks for 6 seconds, what I've been complaining about finally in a perk, but they are all above average. Not anything that's like, oh my gosh, that's going to be really game changing and help you and everybody else completely so in like so many different ways. So for those reasons, Jen Romero, you are in tier B. Getting the B plus in this tier, it is none other than William Bill Overbeck. And his first perk is called Left Behind. If you are the last survivor remaining, you can see the aura of the hatch within a 24-meter range. To be honest, this perk is this is the actual perk that stopped him from going to the A tier. I feel like if there was at least a 36 to maybe 42 to 48-meter range on this, I would say absolutely this is a game-changing perk, a life-saving perk, and a perk you must have. I really do like Left Behind. I just wish it was tweaked up a little bit better. His next perk is Borrowed Time. Pretty much after unhooking a survivor within the killer's terror radius, they gain the endurance effect for 15 seconds. Any damage taken during that time would put the unhooked survivor, that would normally put the unhooked survivor into the dying state, will then apply the deep wound status effect. Pretty much survivors have 10 seconds to mend themselves. If the immediately, they actually definitely should. If the unhooked survivor does take any damage when they are in the deep wound status effect or the deep wound timer ends, the unhooked survivor is immediately put into the dying state. Again, this perk is very, very useful. It is basically helping the other survivors to unhook them and let them take that extra hit. They get 10 seconds to kind of mend themselves. If not, they do get immediately downed. This could be a perk that saves their life, and the killer may actually not chase them once they realize that. Or if they do chase them, then they're just going to chase them until they eventually just immediately get put into the dying state then, because the time's going to run out eventually. So a very, very good perk. And his third perk is Unbreakable, one of my favorites. It grants the ability to fully recover from the dying state once per trial, and the increased dying recovery speed is increased by 25%. Again, really solid overall. Like I said, my only gripe with it is the Left Behind perk. If they could increase the meter range on it, he would have been an A. He would have been an an A survivor for me. So for those reasons, Bill, you get the inaugural B plus for the survivor. So to recap all of the survivors in Tier B, it is Nea Carlson, Feng Ming, Detective Tapp, Jane Romero, Kate Denson, and of course the man getting the B+, William Bill Overbeck. To kick things off here in Tier A is going to be Jeff Johansson. His first perk is called Breakdown. Anytime you are removed from a hook or escaped or saved, the hook breaks and the killer's aura is shown to you for 4 seconds. Again, a very useful perk. I definitely do like it. It's will stop the killer from putting you back on the same hook, and it kind of can give you that chance to stun him and escape. So very, very useful. His next perk is Aftercare, which basically means you see the aura of every survivor that you rescue from a hook or rescues you from a hook. When you complete a healing action or they complete a healing action on you, they also see your aura. This occurs for up to one survivor at a time. All effects of Aftercare reset when you are hooked by the killer. Again, very, very useful. The fact you can kind of self-communicate with somebody through this perk, especially if you're an individual and going solo and you have 3 people you not even talk to. Again, it's going to be very, very useful. Very, very good. And overall, an A type of perk. His last perk is called Distortion. You start the trial with 3 tokens. When your aura would be shown to the killer, Distortion activates and a token is consumed. For the next 6 seconds while this perk is active, your aura plus scratch marks will not be shown to the killer. Distortion does not activate when you are in the dying state or in a trap. cough, cough, the trapper. Overall, this perk isn't too bad. I do like this perk, but it's very useful for only really barbecue and chili, which we've covered that in the killer's power video. Not power, but perk video. But overall, I think that's kind of the one perk that kind of stopped it from being up there as an A+, is that kind of perk in general. It's not too bad, but it's very rarely used and utilized. Like, it's not going to be as useful as his other two are. So, for those reasons, Jeff Johansson, you are still in Tier A. So next up in Tier A, it is going to be Nancy Wheeler. Her first perk is Better Together, which means the aura of the gen you are currently repairing is revealed to all other survivors located within a 32-meter range. If the killer downs a survivor while you're repairing a gen, you see the aura of all other survivors for 8 seconds. What can I say to that besides extremely useful and a must-get? To be honest, I have nothing negative to say about that one. It's just an overall good perk. Her next perk is Fixated, which means you can see your own scratch marks at all times while uninjured. You walk 10% faster. I do like the fact that they added the 10% faster. They said I could just scream my scratch marks at all times. I'm like, yeah, that's not bad. It's like an above an average perk. This makes it an above average perk. I wouldn't say it's an A perk, but it is definitely a B perk. Very, very good, but overall, just it is what it is. It's an okay perk. It's like, all right, cool. Her third perk is called Inner Strength. Each time you complete a totem cleanse action, Inner Strength activates. If you have the broken status effect, Inner Strength does not activate actually. But while Inner Strength is active, hiding inside a locker for 10 seconds while injured will automatically heal you from the injured to healthy state. At that point, Inner Strength becomes deactivated as soon as it has successfully been triggered. Overall, very, very good. Extremely useful. I'm not a big fan of the fact that you have to wait for 10 seconds. I would say 5 to 7 would have been okay, but as for 10 seconds, doing a little bit too much there. So for those reasons, that's kind of what stopped her from being an A+, but overall, her perks are quite useful, but I would say they are A quality as a whole. So with that being said, congrats, Nancy Wheeler. You are in the A tier. So getting the A+ in Tier A is going to be Claudette Morel. Her first perk is Empathy, which basically means dying or injured allies' auras are revealed to you within a 64-meter range. Empathy won't reveal auras of allies when they are in direct contact with the killer. This is a very good perk. It's not something that is overpowering to where it's unfair for the killer, and it's just right. It is a very good perk that can help out the whole team. I do actually like this perk quite a bit. Her next perk is called Botany Knowledge, which basically means healing speeds and healing item efficiency are increased by 11%. It's actually one of the things where I was like, 11% is a very weird number, but overall, another solid perk for yourself if you're healing somebody else and yourself. And you'll explain why I said herself in a little bit in just a couple seconds, because her third perk is Self-Care. It's basically, it grants the ability to heal yourself without having an item at 50% the normal healing speed, and then it increases the efficiency of having an item for self-heal by 10%. So overall, it literally is helpful to herself that she can heal herself. There's no cap on that. And you constantly, like I said, it's useful. It is very, very useful, very, very effective. It helps the team, helps herself. It increases the healing speed. She's an all-around, like, literally a medic. It's like, I need a medic if you're playing, like, a car, like, medic, please, or siege, if you're on defense, you have doc. Medic me, right, resume type thing. That is literally Claudette, and I feel that's one of a really key factor of and this game is Dead by Daylight to have those type of perks. They're just so useful and can really help out the entire team. Very useful. She gets the A+. Even though I have never given this out before, it's because I had such a hard time picking who was going to be the best survivor out of all of them that I had to give 2 survivors an A+. But I figured that wouldn't be good enough. I had to give one an A++, and then an A+. So this survivor is getting an A++. That means it's just, it was so hard to pick between Claudette and Adam Francis. But because Adam Francis has so much more depth with his perks, he had the A++, and had some that Claudette can also do as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, getting the A++, it is none other than Adam Francis. His first perk is called Diversion, which means it is an activatable perk. Standing within the killer's terror radius while now in a chase for 45 seconds will activate this perk. Once Diversion is activated, you can press whatever button it is to activate this ability. And while crouched and motionless, you can throw a pebble in either direction, and which it creates a distraction for the killer at a distance of 10 meters. The perk timer resets once the ability has been activated. The distraction consists of a loud noise notification and scratch marks. You want to talk about really messing and really, really kind of destroying the killer's actual good chances here. Diversion is that perk. It is an amazing, phenomenal perk. I can't tell how many times this has saved me and saved other people when I was getting somebody off the hook and about to get chased and probably down from the injured state. And I threw that pebble and thought I was somewhere else and I was able to escape, and we were all able to escape together. It's been just such a useful perk, one of my favorite perks in Dead by Daylight as a whole. His next perk is called Deliverance. Basically, what it means is after performing a safe hook rescue on another survivor, Deliverance activates. You now have a 100% chance of unhooking yourself during the escape attempt. Remember, this is only your first escape attempt. A successful deliverance from the hook triggers the broken effect for 100 seconds. Honestly, this is very reasonable to be able to quickly get off the hook, be like, ha ha ha, I'm not going to be here for that long, and escape the 100 seconds. It is well worth having that instant hook escape. His third perk is Autodidact. Now, this is where people actually don't like this perk. You start the trial with a minus 25 progression penalty to skill checks to heal survivors. For every successful skill check while healing a survivor, you receive a token up to a max amount of 3. Each token grants you a 15% progress bonus. Great skill checks cannot be performed while using Autodidact. Autodidact is not active when using a medkit to heal. To be honest, you don't, for one, need great skill checks. As long as you hit these things, they're bigger than the actual generator skill checks. So it's not hard to hit. The only thing is it doesn't have a white line, but you can you can completely see the Autodidact little skill check, and it is so easy, especially when you hit 2 of them, and then they come in quick succession. So as long as you have a good tap finger, you'll literally be done healing them within 3 triggers. Very, very useful. I highly recommend that perk. Honestly, all of his perks, that's why in my opinion, him and Claudette are the 2 best survivors to use as survivor. And if you don't want to use them, I highly recommend getting their perks. They are so worth it, and you could become really a toxic survivor with those 2 perks. I'm not advertising for that because I play as killers. Don't you do that to me, survivors, but definitely a massive big help to your team and just overall usefulness to yourself. So Adam Francis gets that A++, everybody. Alrighty, so to recap Tier A, we have Jeff Johansson, Nancy Wheeler, the A+, Claudette Morel, and for the first time ever, the A++, Adam Francis. And guys, with that being said, also, if you would actually like, before we go, if you'd like to actually support me in a more personal way, I do have my Patreon up. I will have that link down below for some exclusive content, as well as some actual exclusive series to you guys for gaming, and even a personal thank you from me. So a lot of cool things are in there. But with that being said, everybody, please do leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to BVTV. We'll see you next week, folks. Okay, guys, have a great one.